Drew here, and one thing that my wife thought after seeing this newest episode of Succession was that it would have been fun if they had just released this episode without telling people that it was the final season and then told them after this episode and got their reactions, because it would have been pretty obvious, she felt, from this episode that this was the final season. And I tend to agree. Usually the premieres of Succession have been all about setting up, the plot lines for the season and where the season is going to go. And there is some of that in this episode, but there's also just a lot of endgame type stuff. I feel that there was an elegiac mood to this episode. It just felt kind of mournful, as Logan spends a lot of time contemplating the end of things and what it's all meant. And to me, at the very least, it's obvious that this is going to be the end of Logan Roy before too long. And knowing that this is the final season, I'm anticipating that this is going to be, a very, very mixed ride from an emotional perspective. On the one hand, I would have loved this show to be around a lot longer, but I am in agreement with Jesse Armstrong that you either, die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become a villain. And I feel like that's kind of the mindset that Jesse Armstrong has brought into this fourth season. Overall, I thought that this premiere was mid. It wasn't like the best episode of Succession I've seen, but it was pretty solid, and I liked it very well, particularly compared to the season 3 premiere, which I felt didn't have quite the assurance that this episode did. I think there were a number of decisions that they made in the writing room that I thought helped escalate things at an appropriate level this episode. I liked that there was a gap between the season 3 cliffhanger and the start of this episode. I liked that there was kind of a slow build over the course of this episode. It didn't just jump right into the action like season 3 did. I think that this show is at its best when it's a little bit more sedate in its pacing to start out. I think when it starts out in a rush, it doesn't really have any way to escalate for the whole season. So it's smart of them to start off in kind of a place of more tranquility and then give themselves some room to escalate over the course of the season. My expectation, and this is a spoiler review, by the way, you've been warned, but my expectation, and I don't have spoilers, I'm just guessing, is that they're leading to the death of Logan some point at the middle of the season, and then the fallout from that will be the rest of the season, and it'll escalate dramatically from that moment. But I've been thinking Logan was going to die for a very long time, so I assume that he has to die before this show ends. But Succession has never done exactly what I thought it should do or would do, so we'll have to wait and see on that one, obviously. But this episode, I thought it was interesting. My wife complained to me afterwards. There wasn't as much of the Succession themes as there usually are. It felt like there was a lot less music this episode than normal, and she felt like that kind of detracted from the moments where there was no music that would have been powerful if it was out of character for the episode, but were less powerful because there was so little music in the episode to begin with. She's more musically inclined than I am, so I can't say that I really picked up on that. I did notice that the overall ambience of the episode was a lot more somber and a lot less bouncy than Succession normally feels. It was a lower energy affair overall, which may have been why I wouldn't say it was in the upper echelon of Succession episodes, but it was pretty solid. I think that, like I said, I liked that they had a more sedate pace to start, which gives them room to build. And I liked that they started in media res. Like, the characters have kind of moved on and are doing different things, and we're catching up with them. And I felt like that was a intriguing way to start the episode. Noteworthily, the trio, they've kind of moved on from Logan and are doing their own thing for once at the start of this season. And they seem healthier than they've ever been. And in contrast with that, Logan, without his kids, seems downright downhearted and to be questioning, like, what was it all for? If I'm not going to be with my kids, if I can't have the people I love and take them along with me on the journey, then what was it all for? I thought there were some very poignant moments this episode with Logan in particular, the moment where he talked to his hatchet man and kind of starts to acknowledge that things might be coming to an end. And I've always questioned whether he would actually do this because, Logan is such an unstoppable force of nature, and to me it felt like he would never have these moments. But again, I think that the show has wisely held off on this until now, and then you realize that, even Logan is coming face to face with his own mortality and being forced to reckon with it. And that's been, such a strong motif of the show, is that he's unwilling to acknowledge that anyone would ever be able to fill his shoes. And he can't handle that, because to acknowledge that would be to acknowledge his own mortality, something that he's really reluctant to do. I liked the moment between him and his, executives, Carl and Frank, where, he's asking someone to riff on him. He's looking for, like some energy in the room, and nobody brings that same level of rapport that he has with his kids. Even though, they're very intimidated by him, they also actually know him, and he's, I think, recognizing that he has no one left who actually, understands him and has that level of communication with him where they can riff on him. I liked that the trio was together this episode. It was nice getting to see the siblings bond and be on the same team for a change. I really like the changes of scenery in this show. It keeps things feeling fresh, and I felt like this felt like a fresh start to a new season. The going back to the Pierce plotline was kind of unexpected to me. I mean, I knew it was going to happen because of the trailers, but I didn't expect it to happen so quickly. But it was a very nice payoff for, the season 2 plotline that really, at the end of the day, didn't really seem to go anywhere. It kind of just petered out. But to come back to it and have this be the payoff that the kids actually get the better of Logan for once. He's the guy who always just throws numbers out to get what he wants, throws bids out, no matter, ridiculously high bids. And to have him, basically, when he loses as a sore loser, yell, oh, congratulations on saying the biggest number, which is what, when he does it, he gets an immense sense of satisfaction from it. I thought that was a very ironic and satisfying moment. I thought that the escalation of tension as the kids realized that they're in a bidding war with their dad and that they actually could win, I thought that was pretty well done. Obviously, I was a little concerned for them that they were bidding too high and that this was going to come back to bite them. But it was still, in the moment, I was rooting for them to beat their dad and get the thing that he wanted and take it from him. So kudos to Jesse Armstrong for getting right into that plot line and, having this situation arise unexpectedly in the first episode. The scenes between Tom and Shiv this episode, I think that was probably the dramatic highlight of the episode for me, this moment where, Shiv is not willing to let him talk about the things that went wrong in their marriage or the ways that she hurt him or that he betrayed her, because she can't allow herself to be that weak in front of him. But that moment where, they're both realizing that their marriage is coming to an end, but they're just reluctant to leave the intimacy that they have, that they just want to enjoy that closeness one last time. I thought that was quite touching, and the music there was quite impactful. I feel that it, really puts you in the shoes of Tom and Shiv and how they must be feeling in that instance. And it's kind of surprising that they can mine that much dramatic territory out of the end of this particular marriage, given that there was never anything particularly genuine and sincere between these two characters. I'm getting a little tired of Greg, to be honest. I used to love this character. I used to think he was a wonderful addition to the show. Him and Connor brought very, very different energy from the other characters. And Connor, this episode, most of his funny lines had already been spoiled in the trailer, but he was still very much on point, I think he still brings a welcome, different energy to the proceedings. But Greg, I feel like he's become such a sleazeball at this point that he's just really hard to watch. I'm not saying he was ever a good guy. I think this was always who he was, and he just didn't have the power to be, so he seemed nicer than he was. But I still just find it frustrating to watch him be so sleazy and so disgusting. He's just very quickly become a horrible, horrible person to watch. So On the whole, I thought it was a solid premiere, pretty mid, but it was still decent, and it gives me hope for the rest of the season that Jesse Armstrong is going to come out the gate swinging and just doing things that perhaps we haven't seen Succession do before. Because this episode, I can't really say that it had an analogous episode in a previous season. It really kind of did its own thing, which I appreciated. So overall, like, I'd give it a B+. Like, solid, better than most shows, not quite up to the best episodes of Succession. But those are just my thoughts for what they are worth. Let me know what you thought in the comments, and let me know your theories about this season, where you think things are going, your favorite scenes from this episode, if there were any lines that stood out to you. I'm going to try to review this show on a weekly basis, but obviously my life is really hectic, so no promises, but I'm going to try. Thanks so much for watching this video, and if you're interested in seeing more videos like this, please consider subscribing. As always, thank you for watching.